All right, everybody. Welcome back to a funky edition of my podcast. Uh, my brother does all the introductory graphics, the music, and edits all the things. And but he's got a photo shoot this week, so he's busy. So I'm just going to record this like this. There's not going to be any fancy intro or anything. And you'll notice that my lighting is a little funky because he swiped my studio lights for his photo shoot. So I got to record this while we still got some daylight. So what are we going to talk about today? We are going to talk about internet hate, from troll comments to uh, how social media has evolved hate on the internet. And I'm not going to be talking about like hate groups or stuff like that. I'm going to be talking about something that's near and dear to my heart from personal experience. I am going to be talking about when a mob of people team up and decide that they hate one specific individual. And, you know, anybody who's followed me for any period of time knows that I've got, some anniversaries coming up, the end of June and the beginning of July, from my own experience with something like this. And that resulted in me getting doxxed and harassed by tens of thousands of people, and fired from my job. So, which, is something that I've been working on for the last several months in therapy with dealing with my PTSD. And I was fortunate enough to find a therapist who is a trauma specialist. And, but what, kind of piqued my attention on this topic, I was just reading some news this weekend and I came across an article on the New York Times website about a woman who was a TikTok star. She had a decent sized following on TikTok. She's young. She was a college student, and she was diagnosed with cancer. And a small army of people formed who hate her and decided that she's lying about her cancer diagnosis. And they formed communities with one another on the internet, where the bonding agent of these communities was their mutual hatred for this young woman. And she's being treated by an oncologist who was educated at Yale, who confirmed that she does have cancer and that she's receiving treatment for cancer, and that cancer and cancer treatment can look very different in different individuals. But anyway, so I'm going to go through that article that I read. I think it's something that's very eye opening. It's something that, you know, you'll view a lot of things differently on TikTok after I go through this article. And then I found two more articles that kind of dissect the psychology and the psychological and life characteristics of the people who do this shit. And again, it's something that I'm intimately familiar with. And so, I mean, it's something I have a connection to. And I read this article and decided I was going to do a podcast episode about it. So let's dive in. This is an article by Catherine Rosman, and it was in the New York Times. The date line is May 1st, 2025. The title of the article is "I Have Cancer," the TikTok star said. Then came a torrent of hate. The subtitle, this young woman's name is Sydney Towles, Towles. Her videos have drawn an enormous audience on TikTok, where her followers praise and support her. On Reddit, an army of skeptics was determined to paint her as a fraud. And I'm just going to read large chunks of this article. It's It's a ride, man. I'm just telling you that. But the Times ended up identifying some of the most consistent hate commenters in this Reddit group that was dedicated to hating her and proving that she was a fraud, which obviously they were unable to do. The Times identified some of these people, contacted them for comment, and without a hint of fucking irony, most of them said, "Please respect my privacy." I am not kidding. I am not kidding. Yeah. Yeah. So let's dive in. By the time Sydney Towell had graduated from Dartmouth College in 2022, she had a growing social media side hustle. On TikTok, where she posted videos, her fans watched her perform dance moves in her kitchen and lip sync to popular songs. She modeled clothing and posed in bikinis on the beach. She gallivanted around Europe with friends. Within a year, she was an influencer in full with more than 450,000 followers. But her content took a sharp turn in August of 2023. In a pink bikini top, her face stained with tears, she spoke directly to the camera. "I have cancer," she said. "I am strong, so I'll be good." She flashed a thumbs up and an awkward smile. Her diagnosis, she said, was something called cholangiocarcinoma, a rare and aggressive cancer of the bile ducts. I don't know what those are or where they're located. I think they have something to do with the liver. Ms. Towell's social media posts grew more frequent and more personal as she joined the ranks of influencers in what is known as cancer talk. She made videos of herself exploring New York City, where she said she had moved to be closer to Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, struggling with exhaustion and nausea that she attributed to chemotherapy, and crying in grief for the carefree life she no longer led. And her growing online fan base, before long she had more than 760,000 followers, routinely cheered her on. "We are all rooting hard for you, girl," one person posted. "Keep up the good fight. Your positive outlook through all of this inspires me daily," another said. But on Reddit, in a more skeptical and caustic corner of the internet, an army of angry critics was assembling. "I literally feel like punching her in the face," wrote one commenter. Ms. Towell's antagonists had quickly concluded that she was leveraging her story of illness for public sympathy and financial benefit. They scrutinized her every word and image, building a case that she was misleading the public. Many accused her of faking cancer altogether. Now 25, she is now at the center of an intense social media collision that reveals the best intentions and the worst instincts of the internet, where isolated strangers can become support systems in times of crises, and sleuths labor obsessively to root out scammers. I think they did a little bit more than that. But in an online economy that feeds off emotion and internet addiction, it's not always clear who is manipulating whom. In mid-March, Ms. Towell posted a video in which she appears to be at a chemotherapy appointment. She is pictured next to an IV pole with a vomit bag in her hand, bopping to the beat of a song. Several days later, she posted another video, this time inviting her followers along on an adventure. "This is us before going scuba diving in the ocean for the first time," she says, standing next to her brother. "This is us after our first dive." They were in Jamaica for a friend's wedding. On Reddit, Ms. Towell's critics saw the stark juxtaposition as evidence that she was not, in fact, sick. "Sid must want to be outed," one person wrote. "Don't worry, she'll be back with the fake nausea and baby voice in no time," another one wrote. Snark pages on Reddit, also known as snark subreddits, are designated forums where people congregate under the veil of anonymity to critique and mock influencers and celebrities. In some cases, they become skeptical of the followers or the influencers they follow and fixated on exposing inconsistencies in their narratives. Does something feel off to you about Sid Towell's cancer story? The subreddit asked. The group's rules included be respectful to each other, as well as no defending Sydney. Wow. 6 months later, the Sid Towel Snark subreddit had more than 1,000 members, a relatively small group, but one with an active core. It was filled with thousands of comments criticizing Ms. Towel's public postings, from the way she characterized the severity of her illness to the appearance of dirt beneath her fingernails. I'm going to get agitated during this, I can tell. Mostly, the commentators focused on their certainty that she was a cancer scammer, like the frauds who have been the subject of recent documentaries Scamanda on Hulu, Anatomy of Lies on Peacock, as well as Netflix's Apple Cider Vinegar, which is based on a true story. Sydney Towell and Scamanda are the parallels too obvious to ignore, was one post, separate post, with all kinds of comments and little essays underneath it. She lies about everything, another commenter wrote. Ms. Towell's critics pointed to her long hair and her penchant for travel and fitness as proof that she could not possibly have the illness that she claimed. They saw contradictions in her treatment, including that she did not undergo chemotherapy for much of 2024. We'll come back to that. Despite what she described as a grave diagnosis. These fucking people created a 28-page timeline of medical details shared by her online, using it to bolster their claims of fakery. This is what these people do for fun. Yeah. This is what they do for fun and social acceptance and to bolster their own self-esteem and to get recognition, positive recognition from others. A 28-page timeline of a stranger's medical history. Fucking unreal. They zoomed in on photos showing a large scar on her abdomen to search for signs of photoshopping. When they were unable to see Ms. Towell's videos, in her videos, any signs of a port. So I recently had a case where a chest port catheter had been installed, and essentially it's a very thin catheter tube that gets injected into a subclavian vein near your collarbone, and that runs down and goes, in this case, it went directly into the patient's heart. And then there's this kind of compartment that the surgeon inserts underneath the skin, and it allows them to inject chemotherapy drugs into the port, which will then go directly into the system. And it also aids in doing blood draws so they can draw blood samples from the patient. So that's what a port is. It's a medical device implanted in patients to facilitate chemotherapy treatments and ease blood draws. They took it when they didn't see signs of a chest port. They took it as a certainty that she was lying. When she posted a video showing a port implanted not on her upper chest, which is common, but on the underside of her arm, which is also common, they remained skeptical. They complained that she was too upbeat. I hate her toxic positivity. I don't believe a word she says. And they accused her of manufacturing emotion on camera to manipulate sympathetic followers. This next part is important. A person using the Reddit handle beginningfield2421 put it this way. No matter how innocent or saccharine she tries to appear on social media, there's still a predatory edge to what she is doing. Think about this in terms of how MAGA and Trump supporters and Republicans label everybody as a pedophile. Everybody's a groomer. Everybody's a pedophile. If everybody else is a pedophile, then you have a duty to root them out and prove it. No matter how innocent or saccharine she tries to appear on social media, there's still a predatory edge to what she's doing. You'll be happy to know that the Times identified Reddit user beginningfield2421 later in the article. And it went about as well as you'd think it would for her. Beginning Field 2421 did not create the Sidney Tal snark page, but she quickly became one of its most active and impassioned members, posting lengthy commentaries. We have receipts, medical analysis, fact-checking, and discussions, she wrote, urging people to join the conversation and tell us how you found us and why you may have doubts. She shared posts with headings like, Sidney Tal, were you lying then or are you lying now? As well as, how to spot when Sidney Tal is lying, her biggest tells, which cataloged Ms. Tal's slow blinks, pauses, and squinting. Having had people like this in my life for an extended period of time, let's shake this out and calm down for a minute here. Sometimes this Reddit commenter's comments were short and scathing. I've never disbelieved or hated this phony bitch more than today. That's it. Some of the commenters claimed to be healthcare professionals. Others compared their experience of living through a loved one's cancer or their own. Many were armed with only an internet education on cholangiocarcinoma, a rare and aggressive type of cancer, according to Google, that often affects adults in their 70s and carries a usually poor prognosis in cases in which the cancer has advanced, as was true of Ms. Tal's cancer, according to her videos. Ms. Tal's critics did not seem concerned about the effect of their hostility. If she fabricated any part of her story, it's deeply unethical and she deserves backlash. That's based on an if. They have no proof. Beginning Field wrote, being a public figure comes with scrutiny. It's part of the job. So now these people are saying it's their job. It's their responsibility to hate and do this kinds of shit to individuals who they don't know on the internet solely because they don't like them. Let's start thinking about what their psychological profile might be. We're going to get to that at the end. On many Tuesday mornings, Ms. Tal leans her phone against a mirror in her East Village walk-up studio apartment and hits the record button and films a Get Ready With Me video. But on these Tuesdays, her videos usually begin the same way. She smiles towards the camera and says brightly, "Get ready with me while I get ready to go for chemo." Sharing her experiences publicly is her way of processing the trials of life, she said in an interview, a habit that began well before she started making cancer videos. In college, she noted she wrote for the school newspaper about her struggles with an eating disorder. The videos, she said, give her purpose when she does not feel like getting out of bed. They connect her to others to whom she can inspire and be inspired by. They also help pay her bills because she's been able to be in TikTok's Creator Fund. She works with a media company. Her TikTok fans regularly urge her to let them contribute money towards her care. She says, I have not begged people for money. I did not start TikTok and then ask people for money for my hospital bills. I never started a GoFundMe. But Ms. Tal's detractors consider any financial benefit an enormous grift. I find her obscene and offensive, one commenter wrote. I see her manipulate people for money when there are real people out there with real cancer juggling real problem. She disgusts me. To Ghassan Abu Alpha, all of this is total madness. He is a Yale-trained oncologist who specializes in liver cancer and bile duct tumors at one of the nation's leading hospitals, cancer hospitals. He is also Sidney Tal's doctor. She has cancer, he said. As Ms. Tal was down the hall getting chemotherapy and simultaneously logged into video meetings for work, Dr. Alpha explained the details of his patient's intrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma. It started in the bile ducts in the liver, and after surgery to remove the original tumor, the cancer has recurred in her liver. The disease has also been detected in lymph nodes next to her liver. Dr. Alpha prefers not to label a 25-year-old who is responding well to treatment, but strictly speaking, she has stage 4 cancer. Ms. Towle, Dr. Alpha said, is helping to shine a light on the emerging face of cancer, one that is young and is neither near death nor cured. Even when receiving chemotherapy and immunotherapy, some patients can maintain a fairly normal schedule, he said. We literally have people who come to us for treatment on their lunchtime from the office and then go back to work. Patients really can live with cancer. No, but not everybody should be looking as if they're dying. Not necessarily every patient is thriving or tolerating chemo as well as Ms. Towle, Dr. Alpha made clear, but many are, which is cause for celebration, he said, not castigation. A young patient like Sydney or at any age can keep going and look very good, but it does not undermine the fact that she's still living with a very serious disease. Told that skeptics on Reddit believe Ms. Towle was lying about her diagnosis because she looked too healthy and was taking part in behavior they deemed risky, he hung his head low and shook it in disbelief and said, "Are you fucking kidding me?" He didn't say that. I added that part. But you know that he wanted to. You know that he wanted to say that. His advice to Ms. Towle, he said, has been this: the point of undergoing treatment for cancer is to preserve and prolong life, and she should be living hers. Always what I tell her is, we want to steal from you 1 day per week for treatment. That's when you're a sick person. When we have to keep the other 6 days for you. If a patient feels too sick to do something, they should listen to their body. Logic matters, he said. But if she has the energy to run 10 miles, he said, and she can run 10 miles, she should do that. If she wants to travel, he said, I would only be bothered if she thinks about cancer while she is away. Ms. Towle first noticed a bulge in her abdomen while she was out running in 2023. She took a Snapchat picture captioned, "Is this normal?" and sent it to a friend. Then she did what many normal young people do. She ignored it. She did nothing. A month or two later, she felt a burning sensation in the same area. She went to urgent care. A month after that, she was diagnosed with cancer. She was 23. She was living in Los Angeles. She started getting, I'm going to skip some of the parts here. She started getting treatment, and then eventually she moved to New York to be close to the hospital where Dr. Alpha works. On TikTok, she received encouragement and prayers. I love your videos, love how positive you are, and look forward to your new experiences in New York City. But elsewhere on the internet, anonymous commenters were discussing why someone with cancer would take a break from cancer treatment for a vacation only to return to make a dramatic video about her worsening illness. She wasn't responding to the chemo the way that the doctors had hoped that she would, but progress was being made, and so her medical team recommended that she take a break from chemotherapy so that they could see how her body would respond to that. And so she did. And she spoke about taking a break from chemo, which of course fueled the people on Reddit. I'm not a TV show that you're watching, which I think people have a really hard time understanding. I'm not a fake person. I'm not a fake character. I am a person. And she refused to be bullied off of social media. But in past months, the online vitriol had intensified. There is something about her looks that annoys me. Sydney's lies trivialize the real experiences of patients and their families. By this point, they had already been told by a doctor that she had been diagnosed with cancer. A doctor educated at Yale who was working at one of the nation's leading cancer hospitals, which tells you that it's about a lot more than their posts would indicate. All of this is eventually going to catch up with her, whether she goes on to pretend to kill herself or miraculously heals. Holy shit. The anger soon leaked out of the internet and into real life. That Reddit user, Beginning Field, urged people to complain about Ms. Towle to the companies whose products she was endorsing on TikTok, and also suggested that Reddit commenters show up at a cancer research fundraiser in New York that Ms. Towle would be attending. Someone else suggested sending her photograph to cancer hospitals implying that they need to be alerted to a potential fraudster. Another contacted the Jamaica Scuba Company where she and her brother had gone diving, inquiring about the protocol for allowing cancer patients to dive. They're fucking crazy. In early February, the movie Apple Cider Vinegar began to stream on Netflix and quickly became a hit. The show is based on the story of Belle Gibson, an Australian influencer who built a lucrative wellness business by claiming to have cured her own cancer through nutrition. As the series grew popular, Ms. Towle noticed a surge in criticism, even on TikTok. My comments have been so inundated with people being like, "You will burn in hell, you are lying." Among the messages she added were death threats. This is for someone who has cancer. She felt stuck in a cycle she had helped create. If she quit social media, she feared her followers would believe that she had something to hide. If she continued to post emotional updates, they would say that she was cravenly seeking sympathy to gin up engagement. If she stopped talking about cancer in her videos, her detractors would say she was too upbeat. I'm sorry that they are so angry that living with cancer can look differently than they think it should, she said. No matter what I do, these people move the goalposts. Been there, done that. Not as it relates to a cancer diagnosis, obviously. But the internet loves a fight, and eventually an anti-Sydney contingent began to gather steam. People who hated the people who hated her. Yeah, so we go through that. Then one woman in the Midwest became so disgusted at the venom directed at Ms. Towle and by Reddit's apparent apathy, Reddit did nothing to take this group down, the Hate Sydney group, that she took action. She spent hours trying to glean the identities of the most frequent anonymous critics, all of whom communicate on Reddit via anonymous cryptic handles, such as No Veterinarian 6552, Spirited Coach 7832, and Far Transportation 152. The woman, a nurse who has worked with cancer patients, spoke to the Times on condition of anonymity so that she did not open herself up to online bullying. She sleuthed out the real identities of nearly a dozen active Reddit skeptics of Ms. Towle by cross-referencing personal details they shared in the comments with information found on Google, Instagram, LinkedIn, and even the interior photographs of a home seen in a Zillow listing. There was a woman who works at a financial tech company, a woman who runs a daycare center for children, a self-described yogi, a woman, and a woman whose nephew died of cancer. Beginning field 2421 among the most persistent critics was a woman named Connie Wright, the privacy officer for Valley Health System headquartered in Bergen County, New Jersey, where she shapes and manages the organization's patient privacy practices, according to her LinkedIn profile. What the fuck? In a message to the Times on Reddit, Ms. Wright, 53, said, "I've remained anonymous to avoid backlash or reputational harm from a public figure with a large and active online following." She then deleted her account with zero irony. The Times also contacted several other participants in the snark page. Those who responded asked not to be included in the article. Some stopped posting or deleted their social media accounts altogether. "My cancer knowledge is extremely limited," said one of Ms. Towle's frequent comments. "Please respect my privacy." The entitlement of these people is fucking stunning. They do this on a daily basis to a young woman who is going through cancer treatment, stage 4 cancer in her fucking liver, and they demand that their privacy rights be respected. I can't tell you how many times I dealt with that. It's mind-boggling. In April, Ms. Tao was a featured speaker at a conference of the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation in Salt Lake City, because that foundation would certainly have someone come speak at their weekend event who's faking. The things that people say behind the protection of their phone are horrifying, she said in her speech. I never thought I would receive the level of hate that I have in sharing my journey. She received a standing ovation from the audience. But her return to the drudgery of chemotherapy several days later was a difficult come down. I'm so overwhelmed, she sobbed in a worrisome TikTok. I am so tired. There was no sympathy on Reddit, where even Ms. Tao's speech at a cancer conference had not persuaded them that she had cancer. Grifting and manipulating is very overwhelming, Ms. Wright posted under her beginning field account name, along with an unflattering screenshot of Sydney as she cried. I hope that Connie Wright, the privacy officer for Valley Health System, headquartered in Bergen County, New Jersey, is having an incredibly shitty week, having been identified in an article for this kind of behavior in an article in the New York Times. She deserves every fucking bit of it. And the article goes on from there. Yeah. So, all right, let's move on to the psychology of people like Connie Wright. The psychological underpinnings of online hatred towards strangers often involve a combination of factors, including the online disinhibition effect, anonymity, lack of real-world consequences, and the presence of social validation or negative reinforcement. Insecure individuals may project their insecurities or seek validation by demeaning others online. Additionally, the anonymity of the internet can create a sense of disinhibition, leading to less restraint and more aggressive behavior. Anonymity can lead to a feeling of being less accountable for actions. The lack of immediate social consequences can also contribute to this effect. I am hoping that Connie Wright of New Jersey is experiencing social consequences as I speak. At 5:30 p.m. West Coast time on Monday, May 5th. Projection and insecurity. Boy, howdy. Let's talk about this one for a minute. Individuals with low self-esteem or insecurities may project their negative feelings onto others. By demeaning and attacking others, they may temporarily alleviate their own feelings of inadequacy or gain a false sense of superiority. One thing that I used to say when I was going through this shit, and there are still 3 or 4 of these people out there who pop up every now and then, is that I have never been attacked on the internet. I've never been doxxed by somebody. I've never had one of these people who makes videos about me. I have never wanted to trade places with any of them. Because, some of these people, like 3 of them I used to be mutuals with. People who I consider to be friends of mine. But so it's like I know enough about them. I mean, there were 6 main offenders in my circumstance, all of whom I reported to the FBI, and I provided the FBI with a 25-page narrative about them and what they did. And I also provided the FBI with a hard drive containing a select, not all of them, I pared it down to 400 TikTok videos that had been made about me by those 6 people. Videos in which they doxed me and used my real name. A couple of them gave my home address. And multiple of them gave the name, address, phone number, and email address for my then employer. And then 10 days later, I was fired from that job. And the FBI has all of that and has permanent files on all 6 of these people now. And, but these 6 particular people, whether it be physical issues, economic issues, life circumstance issues, employment issues, whatever you want to describe it as, I wouldn't have fucking traded places with any of those people if you paid me $1 million. They are people whose lives were and remain utterly miserable before they ever met me, before they ever came across me, leading lives of pure, absolute misery, independent of anything or anybody external to their daily physical existence. And so it's like individuals with low self-esteem or insecurities may project their negative feelings onto others. By demeaning or attacking others, they may temporarily alleviate their own feelings of inadequacy or gain a false sense of security. And so I think big picture, these people in that article, like Connie Wright of New Jersey and others like her, what they were doing, it had nothing to do with Sydney. And the people who came after me, it had nothing to do with me. It was all about them and their own crippling insecurities, cripplingly low self-esteem, their anger and rage at life for the life circumstances that they had been handed that felt unjust and overwhelmingly unfair. And then it's like when I became a target, it's like when Sydney became a target, they joined these little cliques and formed community with one another. Like those people formed a community in that subreddit, the people who hated Sydney Towell. I used to see these folks in the comments of each other's videos all the time in the weeks and months following when I got doxxed and fired. I used to see them commenting on one of them would make a video about me and all of the other ones would be in the comments of that video, and that would just like rotate amongst all of them. They would all be in the comments of each other's videos that they made about me. And I wasn't even interacting with any of these people anymore. So it's like they formed a community of friends, I guess, who used to say positive things to each other based on their level of hatred for me. It was pretty wild. Social validation and negative reinforcement. Online platforms. Okay. So I'm going to skip ahead to the last article because I got about 20 minutes left here. So I did find some really good, scientific, psych journal articles kind of thing. And I came across one from an organization called Science Direct. And it's just called Social Media and Online Hate. Because it's like online hate fixation, like one person kind of stalking another individual. I wanted to find an article that included the dynamics of social media itself and how groups and communities of these people form and kind of feed off of each other and validate each other and support and encourage each other in this fucked up behavior, targeting one individual. And this article, I think this was the best one that I found that included that subject area. Social media hosts alarming degrees of hate messages directed at individuals and groups, threatening victims' psychological and physical well-being. Traditional approaches to online hate often focus on the perpetrators' traits and their attitudes towards their targets. Such approaches neglect the social and interpersonal dynamics that social media affords, by which individuals glean social approval from like-minded friends. The mob. They're just a fucking mob. You know, whether it's 6 people, 10 people, 100 people, or 1,000 people. They're just a fucking mob. A theory of online hate based on social approval suggests that individuals and collaborators generate hate messages to garner reward for their antagonism toward mutually hated targets by providing friendship and social support that enhances perpetrators' well-being as it simultaneously deepens their prejudices. Recent research on a variety of related processes supports this view, including notions of moral grandstanding, political derision as fun, guilty, and peer support for interpersonal violence. Okay, outstanding. The proliferation of hate online has become recognized as one of the biggest challenges to social media industries. Throughout 2020 and into 2021, major technology companies announced that they were taking unprecedented action against hate speech, harassment that had long flourished on their platforms. Yet the level of online hate and harassment reported by users barely shifted. Online hate is pervasive. Surveys across several countries indicate that 42% to 67% of young adults observed hateful and degrading writings or speech online, and 21% had been victims themselves. Online hate has negative effects on the well-being of both victims and observers, including depression, isolation, paranoia, social anxiety, self-doubt, disappointment, loneliness, and lack of confidence. The effects of observing and receiving hate via social media, however, may be quite different than the effects of expressing hate via social media. Although some scholars suggest that dark participation in online hate reflects individuals' malevolent impulses. An alternative perspective considers whether social media helps satisfy the need for inclusion and recognition that these bad actors have. From that perspective, the conduct of online hate as a social process enhances its perpetrators' well-being because they're being rewarded. By identifying, collaborating, and reinforcing other like-minded culprits and forming bonds with them, forming community with them through virtual interaction and hate of one individual, they may experience validation and social support. I watched it. I watched it with my own eyes. I watched it happen live in all of their videos and all of them commenting on all of their videos. I watched them form their little community. I watched it happen live, including people who know my real name and have my fucking cell phone number. Because we had been friends. We had been, well, let me rephrase that. We had been TikTok friends. And then this exact same thing happened. When people who I had been TikTok friends with saw an opportunity to gain validation and social support by identifying, collaborating, and reinforcing other like-minded culprits and forming bonds with them through what they were all doing to me, it satisfied their needs for inclusion and recognition. Clout chasing. It was clout chasing. They got reinforcement and approval from others for attacking me. It was a super fun period of time. But, you know, I feel fully justified and proven almost 2 years later in saying quite clearly and succinctly, fuck you. I won. Hope that helps. Online hate generalized includes racist, sexist, religious, anti-immigrant, gender, sexual orientation related insults, verbal attacks based on ethnicity, political orientation, or other categorical characteristics. It also includes deliberate harassment of specific individuals in new forms of expression that are indigenous to the internet, ranging from trolling to doxing to degrading or insulting memes or altered images and revenge porn. And, like publishing people's names and addresses and the names and addresses and phone numbers of their employer. A dear friend of mine, people were posting photos of her home where she, as a single woman, lived alone in the woods because she expressed empathy in a way that they didn't like. So, all right, I'm losing my daylight a little bit here. So these actions threaten victims' well-being in terms of their real life privacy, safety, and or sanity. PTSD. They appear in interactive websites and social media such as TikTok and private groups like Discord groups, and on Twitter, Gab, Parler, 4chan, 8chan, and email discussion lists. Traditional approaches to online hate tend to draw on assumptions that have little to do with contemporary social media. Similar to cyberbullying research, studies often focus on the perpetrator's personality differences and pathologies that lead them to hurt other people online, as opposed to bringing the social media aspect of that into play. And so that's why I appreciated this article. Let me see if there's anything else from here. I'm about out of time. Then you add in this idea of moral grandstanding, and boy, who is better at that than the left, man? Holy shitballs! The moral grandstanding. I mean, I've been through really heinous shit on TikTok twice. Once was 2 years ago when I was getting attacked and doxxed and all of that stuff, and I got fired. The second time was almost exactly 1 year later after I watched, excuse me, after I watched the debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and I was like, he's cooked. I said, he's cooked. He's got to drop out. And he and his team just completely fucked every single person who has been supporting him for the last year. Since he announced re-election following the 2022 midterms when he should have dropped out. And the hatred that I got from the left, 98% of which came from liberal white women. That's just reality. But it did. And it was stunning. It was absolutely stunning. And it was moral grandstanding. It was total moral grandstanding. Moral grandstanding suggests the individual post potentially polarizing ideological statements, not so much to persuade others of one's position, but rather as a form of value signaling or virtue signaling that is directly or indirectly concerned with increasing one's own influence, rank, or social standing. Hate messages often contain moralistic judgments, suggesting that hate messages, too, may be motivated by seeking recognition, status, and prestige when individuals impress others with their moral qualities. Is there a better description of the left on TikTok than that? I would submit that the answer to that question is no. Anyway, if you enjoyed this upbeat and motivational podcast episode of Hawk's Podcast, please click like, leave a comment, Please subscribe to my page. It's free to do so. And thanks everybody for listening. And I appreciate everybody who has subscribed up to this point. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you very much for doing that. It means the world to me. It will help me get through my fake cancer diagnosis. And again, to the haters, fuck you. I won. I'm still here. Hope that helps. All right. It is, for me, it's dinner time on Monday evening. The sun's still out a little bit. My brother's going to get cranky because I recorded this podcast with no lighting. Don't take my lights, Falcon. But no, he needed them for a photo shoot. And so thanks again, everybody, for listening. And I'll see everybody soon. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comments. And I promise I'm going to start engaging with comments on YouTube. I swear to God. That's like my resolution for this week. All right. I'll see you guys. Thanks again.